I'm very honored, and I think we all have to be honored, to have James Wolfensohn with us today. As he says in the book, as his book says, A Global Life, and as he says in the book, he considers himself more a citizen of the world than any one nation. He is truly a man of the world. But I think he goes beyond that. He transcends that. He's really a Renaissance man. And you know, a Renaissance man is someone who is not only well educated, but excels in a great many fields. He's certainly well educated. He went to the University of Sydney, received his BA and his law degree. He also went to some school in the Northeast here, Harvard Business School at Harvard University. But beyond formal education, he has a much broader education. So 1995, while your firm was just doing phenomenally well, you agreed to take on the presidency of the World Bank, a monumental task. What did you find at the World Bank, and what did you change there?
Well, I was asked by President Clinton to do this job, and it had been a dream of mine. I'd been approached, as I said once before, to do it, and the job had gone to Tom Clausen at the Bank of America, very correctly, thank God, because it allowed me to start my own firm. But I was given just a few days to decide, and there was some competition. But anyway, it's described in the book. But I decided to take the job because, for me, what it did was to put in perspective everything I'd done in my life. I'd done finance, I'd done work in poverty, I'd done work in foundations, I'd done work in the arts, I'd done work in women's issues, I was on the Population Council Board, I'd done work in so many of these things. And all of a sudden, in one place, you had the opportunity of trying to use the experience that you had in the past, and not just on a national scale, although that's huge, but on a multinational scale. For those of you that don't know, the World Bank deals with the developing countries, of which there are 140, 150, and the rich countries, the OECD countries, that's the United States, Europe, and Japan, in those days had 80% of the world's GDP, with 1 billion people. The other 5 billion people were the customers of the World Bank, and they had 20% of the world's GDP. For 30 years, that 80-20 had been 2 or 3% up or down, and before that it was 90-10. But what was evident was that the world was changing. But of the 6 billion people on the planet, 3 billion lived under $2 a day. 3 billion. And 1,200,000,000 lived under $1 a day. And the place that was at the epicenter of trying to do something about it was the World Bank. Much criticized by some, lauded by others. And I had the enormous opportunity that President Clinton gave me of going in to try and shake the place up and to participate with that platform in trying to make the world a better place. And I have to say that it was truly remarkable, because you didn't have a single boss. You had a board of directors of 24 representing a whole host of countries. But there were a couple of things that I think were very clear to me. One was that corruption was not something that was a theoretical impact on development, but it was at the very core of ineffective use of funds and projects. And I discovered that really quite quickly, but no bank president in the history of the bank had ever spoken about corruption at an annual meeting, ever. And I, unknowingly of this, started to write my second speech, and I wrote about the cancer of corruption. And the general counsel, who was looking over the speech to see if I had offended anybody, came into my office and said, "Jim, will you come outside for a minute?" So we went into the great amphitheater outside my office, and he took me over to a corner like that, and he said, "I want to tell you, Jim, or Mr. President, that you cannot use the C word." I said, "What the hell is the C word?" He said, "Corruption." I said, "Why can't you use the C word?" He said, "Because a proportion of your shareholders are corrupt, and they're represented on the board. So we don't deal with corruption." And I said, "Well, that's great, but I'm going to do it. So I made a speech on the cancer of corruption, including other things. The interesting thing was that 6 months later at the semi-annual meeting, every minister spoke about corruption and why they didn't have corruption in their country. But it allowed us really to open that subject up, and there were many other subjects that we got into. And the vehicle of the World Bank was truly a remarkable vehicle and a remarkable opportunity, and it is underestimated, I think, what the 10,000 people there do.
Jim, thank you. This has been marvelous, just outstanding.